Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Business Environment Council, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you for joining our webinar on opportunities for circular economy in Hong Kong. In today's webinar, we will share the key findings from BEC's report, Circularity Assessment of Hong Kong, and discuss with leading experts in the field on how the city can become circular. Before we begin, I would like to thank Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, KAS, for sponsoring BEC's project on this. For the first item of the day, I would like to invite our CEO, Mr. Adam Koo, to give his opening remarks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for signing up to this webinar entitled Opportunities for Circular Economy in Hong Kong, which is organized by the Business Environment Council and sponsored by Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. On behalf of BEC, I want to extend a warm welcome to you all. Anyone can tell the difference between a line and a circle, but can they do it in the context of how cities and economies function? Over 90% of the current global economy operates in a take, make, waste linear model. Imagine the front end of the line is material inputs and the tail end is waste output. Without closing the loop by making a circle, the consumption of finite resources and the creation of waste will go on, which is clearly not sustainable and will create serious problems for our planet. Hence, how to transition from a linear to a circular economy has recently become an extremely important topic for policymakers, business sector, and even the general public. Since 2019, BEC has identified circular economy as one of our 3 environmental focus areas. We have also repositioned our former Waste Management Advisory Group as the new Circular Economy Advisory Group with increased emphasis on a circular approach. Just last month, we published a report titled Circularity Assessment of Hong Kong, of which I'm very excited as this is BEC's first attempt to study the state of circularity in Hong Kong and will set the scene for other works to come. Later in the webinar, my colleague will share with you the findings of the research and also some recommendations that we believe will help set Hong Kong on the right pathway towards circularity. Being a business association, BEC also has a critical role to promote circular principles and practices to our members and the wider business community. Going circular will generate a wealth of benefits for the private sector, such as expanding into new markets, mitigating ESG risks, and stimulating innovation. A leading professional services company estimates that the circular economy could represent a $4.5 trillion global growth opportunity by 2030. So the benefits to participate early are clear. Of course, a crucial part of the transition is having government policies that provide an enabling market environment. Just before Chinese New Year, the Environment Bureau announced their new Waste Blueprint for Hong Kong 2035. The government's vision is to achieve waste reduction, resources circulation, and zero landfill, as well as to progressively develop a circular economy. The government Waste Blueprint and the BEC report together frame us up nicely for a timely conversation on the transition to a circular economy in Hong Kong. I'm extremely grateful to our panel of experts for joining us here today, and I look forward to hearing your valuable insights. With clear benefits to both business and society, I'm sure you all will agree with me that circular economy is the way forward. I have every confidence this event and the dialogue that follows will get us one step closer to resource circulation in Hong Kong. Enjoy the webinar all. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I would like to now invite Dr. Christian Hubner, the head of Regional Program Energy and Climate Change Asia Pacific of KAS, to give his opening remarks.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Regional Project Energy Security and Climate Change of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, I wish you all as well a very warm welcome. And would like to thank as well Mr. Adam Koo for the introductory remarks and organizing this important event, Circular Economy. Ladies and gentlemen, circular economy is not only a crucial driver for new business opportunities, it is as well a necessary for the low carbon development. The way we use and manage our resources will have a fundamental impact whether we are able finally to reach our own climate targets. Therefore, globally, circular economy is becoming more recognized as a solution to facilitate better resource utilization and waste reduction. Circular economy have many dimensions and depending always of local circumstances. Therefore, I'm really looking forward to this webinar and learn more how the things are here in Hong Kong. Thank you for your attention and many thanks to the speaker and the Business Environmental Council for organizing this important event. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. And moving on to the next item of the day, I will be presenting the findings from BEC's report. I'm Ming, and I'm part of the policy and research team here at BEC. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the hiccup. So before we begin to discuss the findings from our report, let us just go over some basic key terms. So what exactly is circular economy? It's a concept that aims to redefine growth from a linear take, make, waste system to one that decouples growth from the consumption of finite resources. So in a nutshell, the system aims to design out waste, to keep products and materials in use, and to regenerate natural systems. Cities in particular are critical to the circular economy, and it is estimated that by 2030, around 60% of the world's population will live in cities, which accounts for 70% of global carbon emissions and over 60% of resource use. Right now, many cities are trying to become more circular, but what exactly does circularity mean on a city level? So while there's no standard definition of a circular city, what we did was that we took existing definitions of a circular city published by think tanks and institutional organizations and compiled them into the following diagram. The definition comprises of 8 general characteristics. Number 1, infrastructure, buildings, vehicles, and products are designed to be durable, adaptable, and modular. 2, there is a new distributed system of resource management. 3, energy systems are resilient, renewable, localized, distributed, and effective. 4, mobility systems are shared, clean, and effective. 5, a local bioeconomy is created, which refers to an economy that uses renewable biological resources and waste. 6, industrial symbiosis is encouraged, which refers to a process where waste of byproducts produced by one company becomes a valuable material for another. 7, new circular business models are mainstreamed. And 8, there is a facilitation of circularity through digital tools. So moving on, let's talk about the key findings from our report. Just as a background, BEC is interested in understanding Hong Kong's progress towards circularity based on the resource management system and to identify the gaps and opportunities to achieve circularity in the city. So in our report, we qualitatively evaluated Hong Kong's circularity based on 8 categories and 48 indicators that were identified as important and relevant to the context of Hong Kong by local industry practitioners. There is currently no standard framework to do so at a municipal level. So what we did was that we took the relevant indicators that were suggested in institutional, academic, and municipal documents. And the categories of these indicators include number 1, raw materials, 2, waste management process and infrastructure, 3, government legislations and initiatives, 4, sharing economy, 5, industrial symbiosis, 6, water, 7, energy, and 8, circular economy markets, private investments, and jobs. So overall, we find that Hong Kong is still a very linear city with limited progress in circularity. And to back up this key finding, we have 5 more in-depth findings. 1, we find that areas crucial to the circular economy, including design, repair, reuse, refurbishment, and remanufacturing, are not well understood concepts by the government, businesses, and the wider public, and therefore are not common activities carried out in the city. 2, waste management in Hong Kong is fraught with difficulties that prevent the industry from better delivering circularity. 3, policies on resource management have typically been promulgated without the strategic consideration of circular economy. 4, the development of industrial symbiosis, a sharing economy, the secondary raw materials market, as well as the financing for circularity are still in its infancy. And 5, the potential to use recycled water, renewable energy is limited by the city's geography, the state of technology, and the lack of economic feasibility in certain cases. And for the purpose of today's presentation, we'll mainly go through the first 4 key findings. And if you'd like to know more about the 5th finding, please refer to our report. So moving on to the first finding, which is on design, repair, and so forth, we find that the development of these practices in Hong Kong really remains slow, especially on design, refurbishment, and remanufacturing. However, there are examples of businesses that extend the life of products through repairs, as it is often offered to customers as a type of after-sales service. And this would include many electronic and vehicle companies, although there are also many local repair and maintenance stores that also provide similar services, such as in this picture of a man fixing a hardware, and here of a man fixing a shoe. And so there are also activities in the city that promotes reuse, which is typically done through secondhand marketplaces, as it can also lengthen the lifespan of a product through the reselling of the product online in physical stores and online exchange platforms. For example, Carousel, Oxfam Hong Kong, and the Salvation Army. So on this front, we have 2 recommendations. 1, we recommend the government to introduce regulations, standards, guidelines specifically related to design, repair, reuse, refurbishment, and remanufacturing. So for example, this would include developing eco-packaging regulations to introduce requirements on the use of recycled materials in products and buildings, or to integrate circular principles into construction, demolition, and city planning. For example, this month, the rights to repair measures proposed under the European Commission's new Circular Economy Action Plan will require companies that sell consumer electronics, such as refrigerators, washers, hair dryers, or TVs in the EU, to ensure that those goods can be repaired for up to 10 years. Manufacturers will also have to ensure that the parts are available for up to a decade, and that the new devices come with repair manuals, and so forth. 2, we urge the government to educate the wider public on circular economy, as the activities carried out on repair and reuse that were mentioned just now are not typically carried out with circular economy in mind. So moving on to the second finding, which is on waste management. Just a recap, we find that since 2014, the generation of MSW in Hong Kong increased from 5.62 million tons to 5.95 million tons in 2018. And the disposal rate per capita has also been increasing. More recently, the global pandemic has also caused an upsurge in the disposal of single-use items. In general, we find that there are many barriers to circularity in the industry, such as volatile market prices for recyclables, the contamination of recyclables, the lack of demand for recycled materials due to the city being a service economy, and so forth. And on this front, we have several recommendations. 1, we urge the government to continue the implementation of the MSW charging scheme, to educate the wider public on proper sorting and recycling, to provide more funding to the circular economy and resource industry, recovery industry, and to explore avenues of collaboration with other regions, such as the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. Because if Hong Kong is to achieve circularity on its own, it may run into structural and fundamental barriers due to the lack of diverse industries in the city. So on this front, it would, for example, include to examine the possibility for greater policy coordination, to have a consensus on the types of materials or recyclables to be collected and traded, and streamlining of the cross-border waste delivery processes. This may present new business opportunities to Hong Kong companies. And although it is sensible from a resource-based perspective, it may be controversial given Hong Kong's current social political climate. So moving on to the third finding, which is on government legislations and initiatives in Hong Kong, we find that these are typically focused on waste reduction and management, as well as recycling, and other aspects crucial to the circular economy are typically overlooked. So more recently, the government published the Waste Blueprint 2035. After the release of this report, it alludes to circular economy and will be further discussed in a panel discussion later. So our report also looked at other initiatives from other cities, such as London, New York City, Shenzhen, Paris, Amsterdam, etc. And we also find that they also release citywide strategies on circular economy. In particular, Singapore also released a similar plan on zero waste, but not on circularity per se. And aside from releasing a strategy that details the city's targets, other cities have also come up with really creative strategies or initiatives to encourage circularity in a city. So for example, Singapore has a program which encourages partnerships between research institutes and companies to create innovative solutions that increases efficiency and material use. Phoenix created a resource innovation campus, which is a hub that provides infrastructure support and business incubation services for circular innovators. And we cover a lot of other initiatives in our report as well. So if you are interested, please refer to the report itself. So on this front, we have several recommendations. One, we recommend the government to take a holistic approach to achieving the circular economy. It is really important for us to move away from the current piecemeal approach and to integrate clear circular principles across government functions and policies, as well as embed them across government departments. Two, to provide financial support to companies working on circular economy. Three, to introduce regulations, standards, and guidelines related to recycling, alongside with government leadership and financial incentives. And four, to collect data relevant to circular economy. Because when we were conducting this research, we found that there's just a lack of data available on the front, and data collected are typically relevant to waste management. So collecting the appropriate data will allow us to better track our performance and to identify the key actions. So moving on to the fourth finding, just as a recap, the finding 4 states that the development of industrial symbiosis, a sharing economy, secondary raw materials market, as well as the financing for circularity are still in its infancy. So for today's presentation, we'll be focusing mainly on the sharing economy and the financing for circularity. So what exactly is a sharing economy? It is an alternative economic model which promotes the borrowing, the leasing of assets or services, rather than encouraging ownership. It aims to efficiently utilize underused resources. So there are several examples of sharing economy businesses in Hong Kong, such as Uber, Airbnb, and WeWork, and local examples include WeUse, which is a cutlery rental service, Wardrobetista, which is a clothing and accessories rental service, and Gaifeng, which is a rental platform. But in general, we find that the concept of a sharing economy is still very novel in the city. And despite the gradual growth in the sector, there has been some controversies over the operations of certain companies in the cities. And so we do recommend the government to re-examine existing regulations and consider how new circular businesses can operate. Lastly, we also looked at the financing of circular economy in Hong Kong. We find that the overall level of private investment in the sector is unclear due to limited information. However, there are examples of private investment allocated for waste recycling, which also falls under the scope of circular economy. So for instance, New Life Plastics Limited secured a sustainability-linked loan from HSBC for its recycling facility. There's also information available on green bond issuances. It was noted that less proceeds were allocated for waste. In 2019, only 8% were issued for waste. And so on this front, we have several recommendations. One, we recommend financial regulators and institutions to incorporate circular economy concepts into risk assessment and modeling. Two, regulators can standardize the definitions and metrics on circular economy, on circular activities, and heighten the need for proper disclosure in the private sector. And three, the financial sector can incorporate more circularity concepts and metrics into existing frameworks, such as a TCFD, to further drive the circularity agenda. So while the government and the financial sector are important in facilitating the transition to a circular economy, businesses also play a very key role. Accenture estimates that applying circular economy principles could represent a US $4.5 trillion global growth opportunity in 2030. And in Europe, it is estimated that circular economy can unlock the region's GDP by an additional 0.5% by 2030 and create around 700,000 jobs. So there are many benefits that comes to businesses who do choose to adopt the circularity principles. For example, it can drive growth through the expansion into new markets. It can reduce operating costs by moderating the resources used. It can stimulate innovation. It can even mitigate risk or increase a company's resilience by mitigating their risk from operating in a linear manner. So the largest risks posed to businesses include volatile resource prices, vulnerable supply chains and resource insecurity, and potential regulatory and reputational challenges. Governments around the world are increasingly introducing tougher regulations, such as landfill taxes and bans, extended producer responsibility schemes, and so forth. And more recently, COVID-19 has also highlighted the risk to supply chain and production that are inherent in a linear economy. Lastly, it can also allow businesses to tackle climate change and other ESG. For example, minimizing the use of virgin materials may reduce Scope 3 emissions along its value chain. And companies potentially also face pressure from their upstream and downstream business partners, as they're also part of other companies' Scope 3 emissions. And as governments, consumers, and other companies become increasingly aware of the importance of circularity, there is a growing business case to integrate circular principles into a company's structure, strategies, and operations. Thank you. If you'd like more information on the report, please refer to it or please email me here.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Simon and I'm the moderator of the panel discussion. To start the discussion, I would like to first introduce our expert panelists. Next to me is Ms. Helga Van Ternot from the Wealth of Flows Consulting Limited. Thank you for coming, Helga. And then next to Helga is Professor Daniel Zhang. I think most of you will notice Daniel. Daniel is the Managing Director of Dunwell Technology Holdings Limited. And Daniel is also Chairman of BC's Circular Economy Advisory Group. Thank you, Daniel. And next to Daniel is Mr. Nigel Metrobus. Nigel is Director of Alba Integrated Waste Solutions Hong Kong Limited. Welcome, Nigel. Of course, we have Ming joining us after the presentation. Thank you, Ming. And last but not least, joining us from her office, we have Dr. Amy Lai. Amy is Senior Sustainable Development Manager of Swire Properties Limited. Welcome, Amy. Can you hear us? You have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Just make sure that you have unmuted yourself, Amy.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Amy. Okay, now after Ming's presentation, I think my first question would like to go to Helga. Because this is an assessment about circularity in Hong Kong, and I know you have spent a lot of time working on circular economy with, for example, Alan MacArthur's foundation. So, what do you think about circularity here in Hong Kong? Do you think we are still quite remote from being circular? What are the elements that you think we are doing okay? We are on the right track, perhaps. And what are missing points?
So first of all, let me start by congratulating BC and Ming on a terrific job done. Measuring the circular economy is one of the headaches we've had over the last decade. So a great start in this field for sure. And this is something for sure that Hong Kong needs of more, whether it's in conventional waste management, recycling, and a lot of other environmental areas. That's a proper baseline. So that's definitely one starting point that we need to get in place, and that we have to make sure that, of course, all of your work here gets into the hands of not just EPD. I think one of the other panelists will talk about that later, but actually all of government. Are we circular? No, we are not. But then again, no city is, no society is at this point. On the other hand, can we get there? Yes, I think we can. And I would like to talk a little bit about the points, the characteristics of Hong Kong that very often are taken as a reason for why we cannot do anything on a variety of points, but are actually real assets when it comes to transitioning to a circular economy. And for that, of course, we have to first and foremost say that circular economy, as Ming has pointed out very correctly, is not just waste management. We have to get out of this idea that as long as we recycle or as long as we keep our materials out of the landfill, we're done. So rather, we have to think of circular economy as a concept for rethinking everything that we do here in this city, in other cities, and outside of cities, of course. But again, being in a city is actually a pretty neat opportunity for the circular economy. So one of the big challenges that we always face for a lot of policies, for a lot of private initiative, is that we are a very, very dense place. A lot of people, a lot of buildings, infrastructure, and a lot of stuff piled up on top of each other. But that, of course, is a primary opportunity for the circular economy, because when we accumulate a lot of users and we accumulate a lot of the things that they would like to use, whether it's infrastructure or products, we have an opportunity to circulate them at a much higher level, right? And recognizing that, on the one hand, what are the needs of a population like the one in Hong Kong, and on the other hand, what can we keep in circulation much more than we have right now? That is a good starting point. The opportunity for sharing, for example, right? A very obvious one would be to share transport, and we see that in a lot of transport access. We have very good transport connections already. There's more opportunity to expand that so that people that are at the moment not yet in a position to take public transport very often because their connections are too difficult, there's too much uncertainty on when to take it. You can actually improve that without even improving the underlying transport infrastructure. Just the information infrastructure would already be a great improvement there. And that's one example of a smart city that probably would not scare even people in Hong Kong too much. The repair opportunity that Ming has also referred to obviously is very, very high in a place like Hong Kong. It is not without its challenges because a lot of products come from abroad. I made the mistake of frying my kitchen robot and I had a big problem because there was plenty of people in Hong Kong that can fix or repair a machine like that, but this one came from the US, so we had to go and source the part ourselves. There's challenges like that, but it's not unsurmountable. One of the biggest challenge or things to overcome there again is the confidence for the population that this can be done without too much trouble and with good results. There, however, we need to strike the right balance, and I think this is true for a lot of areas here in Hong Kong, between too much formality and too much regulation and what we currently have. Because, and this is another aspect where I would say we have a terrific opportunity here in Hong Kong, this city knows how to make use of its spaces. We may throw up our hands in despair sometimes at decisions around formal planning decisions, but the population, the businesses, they know how to max out space, right? They know how to max out repair opportunity. They know how to max out actually a recycling opportunity or a collection for recycling opportunity. So how do we capture that without regulating it too heavily so that we kill entrepreneurial spirit, we kill the opportunity? And I think that in a sense is a wonderful challenge for the city, but also a really tricky one to navigate. Maybe stop here. I mean, have more examples, but yeah. I don't know how long.
Yeah, sure. Well, but thank you, Heather. I think you set the tone, and I think it's a very good start for the conversation. Now, let me remind everyone, the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box. And I'll try my best to share your comments or questions to our panelists. If I may, Nigel, I know you're very busy right now with your recycling plant. Now we're talk about don't overdoing regulation, because then it will kind of stop some initiatives or ideas coming directly from businesses or the general population. But I think on the other hand, if there's no regulation or no requirements in the context of your plants and recycling and the materials that you're going to produce, then it's not going to work as well. So what's the challenges you are facing by having a plant where you are maybe worried about, okay, what's next with the secondary materials. Can you tell us a little bit about the dilemma as an investor, as you try to help Hong Kong in terms of becoming more circular, but at the same time, you have to overcome hurdle after hurdle in that process?
Yeah, thank you. Let me just step back a little, if I may, because again, as investors, people are looking for certainty in policy. And so I really do see that developing the circular economy is an important strategy that goes across all departments. It doesn't fit in one box of environmental or finance and the like. And it really should be seen on, I'd say, a cabinet level and set policy for the whole of the way that Hong Kong are going forward. And that includes business department, includes land, it includes planning. But also, and again, as an investor, you want to have confidence. And we want to see that it fits in with all the other strategies. So most important of which is a carbon reduction strategy, which the Finance Secretary is talking about at the moment, which is very important indeed. But as you mentioned, we've got the waste reduction blueprint, which does talk some, as I think Ming said, alludes to the circular economy. But at the same time, we're introducing PRS schemes, producer responsibility schemes, which also feed into this. And also, we've been talking about reindustrialisation. So I think investors always want confidence in the direction that government is going. Now, that may be accompanied by direct legislation, including landfill charging and other elements as well. But basically, you want to know that this fits in to an overall strategy for Hong Kong and all these things that are integrated as well. Okay. And particularly, if I may, can I go into the need for infrastructure?
Sure.
Okay, let's go. Because all these things that people talk about don't just happen because people think, oh, this is a great idea. And it's got to be converted at some point into infrastructure. And we do need facilities to enable these things to happen, which does require space. Now, as Helga said, Hong Kong is actually very good at finding space, if need be, but we do need people to say, yeah, put some space aside. It doesn't have to be necessarily on the ground. It can be 15 stories up. It doesn't really matter too much. Because with this, and then with smart logistics, and again, Ming referred to clever logistics really of doing that. And lots of places, including Singapore, have moved down the smart city approach for logistics. But we do need advanced sorting. And so referring back to your original question, they're looking at plastics. Well, plastic covers a lot of different things. And without sorting in some way, then it's very difficult to do that. And so we do need sorting facilities. And these will support the whole thing of refurbishment as well. We're obviously doing some refurbishment of waste electronics. We can do far more. Repurposing, which I don't think we've referred to too much. Reuse, as well as then recovering and then going towards remanufacture. Does this fit in the reindustrialisation strategy for Hong Kong? So yes, we need overall planning and we also need infrastructure to make it happen.
Thank you, Nigel. Now, can I just follow up quickly? You mentioned, circular economy should be discussed or getting the support from the cabinet level. Do you think we should, or the government should consider setting up like a high-level committee within the government structure? Now, I do not have a strong opinion on whether we should or should not have that kind of structure. But based on previous examples on climate change, for example, we have a committee, high-level committee chaired by the chief secretary.
Yes. Yeah.
Should we have something similar to that?
Yes, I think it should be chief secretary level. And it could be maybe together. I'm certainly a person for small government, but I think we do need everybody to pull together. And I do come back that often these desires for carbon and waste and whatnot come secondary in thinking in terms of planning with land allocation. Now, land we know is very precious. Land for housing is obviously very precious. But the lands department have quite a lot of power to make things happen. And so we really need policy to say to all of the departments, you have got to make a contribution to making this happen.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. If I may turn to Amy. Amy, hi. Can you tell us, at the company level, because I think Swire Properties, you gave us an impression that you're very innovative, you are at the forefront of almost everything. You try new things and you share your knowledge and your experience. So in particular on circularity, have you got any experience within the organization to push for circular design, operation, and do you have any success? On the other hand, have you encountered any real challenge that you would like to highlight in this conversation?
Right. Thank you, Simon. Yep, I think I also agree a lot, share a lot of same views with the speakers previously. But for us, let me share Swire Properties experience in terms of two aspects. One is from the strategy level, and then also from some selected initiatives that we implement. So on strategy, so in last year, we reviewed our SD 2030 strategies through stakeholder engagement and also materiality review, and which resource and circularity has been updated as one of our focus areas as an all-embracing term to the aspect of waste management. And by reframing waste in the context of resource use and management, we encourage our employees, tenants, suppliers, and also other partners to engage with the topic with greater positivity and creativity well before resources are used, and thus supporting our transition to a circular economy. And on initiative side, at Swire Properties, we have been carrying out a wide array of circularity initiatives across different phases of a building's life cycle, ranging from design and construction to the daily management of the buildings. So take One Taikoo Place, our latest building, as an example. So we understand from our study, embodied carbon in the building's concrete, rebar, and structural steel make up nearly 90% of the building's upfront carbon emissions. So we adopted around 60% of rebar and structural steel from recycled steel. And also for concrete, we also adopted a Hong Kong CIC certified concrete with recycled content, around 20 to 25% of pulverized fuel ash. So that's some example from our One Taikoo Place. In addition, we also are the first commercial building in Hong Kong to adopt a waste to energy tri-generation systems. So we collect waste cooking oil from our food and beverages tenants and also hotels, and then turn those waste used cooking oil into biodiesel by a local recycler and then fit into the system. So this is the system also able to supply combined heating, cooling, and power generation for the building. And then on operation side, so we also introduced sustainability guidelines for our tenants, including F&B and office tenants undertaking new fit outs and renovations, so which allow them to discuss sustainability before fit out and renovation projects. And we also gave specific recommendations for our F&B tenants on how to reduce energy and waste usage, improve air quality, and allocate space during their green fit out for the green kitchen initiatives. So we actually recognize up to now 28 F&B tenants in Hong Kong and the Chinese mainland with this Green Kitchen Award that we launched since 2097. And also, as a building manager, that over 90% of our waste managed at our portfolios come from building users, including the tenants and visitors and also customers. So we have been working tirelessly to promote recycling with our tenants and the general publics. And we offer and facilitate over 20 types of recyclables from our building occupants, take one example, food waste. Last year, we have been actually promoting food waste recycling to our F&B tenants and also office tenants. And most of the food waste are collected, of course, go to the old part. But despite the pandemic challenges last year, the number of office tenant floors participating in our food waste recut program actually increased by 4 times. And we also engage our community through, experimenting and use some different ways, such as the reverse vending machine. We have reverse vending machine in our portfolios, and then we also compare the before and after. We observed that up to 2 to 6 times of increase in the plastic bottles recycling after the installation of those reverse vending machine. And we are also working with, global sourcing some innovative partners to introduce innovative reuse models into, our portfolio. We have introduced the first smart reusable cup concept at Taikoo Place to encourage reuse habits and reduce disposable cups. So up to now, end of February, we, since the launch, we have avoided over 3,600 disposable cups. So, and we are expanding the cafe network from 2 cafes to 5 cafes in the first week of March. So there's some, some examples that I can share from Swire Properties. And I think, the challenges, major barriers in addition to the ones mentioned by the panelists, I think there are 2 aspects we think we can further work on. One is the information, and the other one is stakeholder engagement. So we find from our experience, many of the circular economy related information, definitions, and indicators are not really available or standardized in Hong Kong, makes it difficult to measure the performance. And, this also, is a finding from the BEC's Circularity Assessment Report. So if we could, accelerate this, if we would like to accelerate this transition, there's a need to build knowledge and understanding of the concept and, the costs and benefits of the circular economy and what it would entail for various sectors. And as a business, we would love to better understand the relevant, guidance and scope and definition on zero waste and circularity in the company context, as well as the available tools to help us establish a baseline and chart of improvement. And from procurement perspective, when we were, trying to procure our low carbon materials and support our journey, and it becomes a challenge when there's limited product available in the market and lack of information transparencies. So, and then also making it difficult to make a choice when there's low transparency. And also because this is circularity is a new concept, I think we also need to engage, the key players in align their concept. So every person in Hong Kong has a role to play, from top level like the government and policymakers to operation level, even cleaning services contractors to every individual in Hong Kong. The circularity concept among all stakeholders should be cleared and aligned. So we have the same goal to achieve. An example is that our cleaning contractor, they plays a key role in the system as they are the second layer from the waste producer who directly handles the waste and recyclables, and they could affect the upstream collection and downstream recycling business if they don't exercise or help with the proper waste and recyclable separation. So this is just a simple example so that, stakeholder engagement with every sector and industry players are crucial for the city's transition to a circular economy. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Amy, for your sharing. On your last point about, sharing information and knowledge, definitely, BC in 2021, we will organize a series of events on circular economy. So for everyone who's joining us today, please stay tuned. We will send you more information about the upcoming events later on. Daniel, I really want to hear from you. I think it's like a no-brainer for businesses to think about circular economy. We have numbers from different authorities saying this is going to contribute to a lot of money it's good for everyone, for cities. Now, as a seasoned businessman, what do you think? Do you think the message is clear and loud? And secondly, because I know you're also working tirelessly to connect Hong Kong with the Greater Bay Area. So on that particular point, do you see opportunities, not just in Hong Kong, but beyond Hong Kong with GBA?
Well, thank you, Simon. First of all, with today's topic is circular economy, which is very appropriate, because the old days we would be talking about recycling and waste reduction. But when we talk about economy, it brings out important point of dollar sign, money. The economy is about money. Who has the money? Well, it's the consumer, and also the government, the regulators, because they're the one that controlling how they want to spend the money. And this is one point that I want to bring out. And for the government, using Hong Kong example, it is very important that the regulators, like EPD, decided we're going to push for many years now, we're pushing for the waste charging. So once you have the waste charging, which is money, it gets people excited more about what we can do. And also developing a direction of a zero landfill mission. So that gives direction. So it is very important that the consumer and the government, we have to work in the same direction. For consumers, it is a vicious cycle that consumers want to go on Taobao and buy cheap products. Okay, you buy something you don't know you need, and you may play around for 2 days and decide it doesn't work, and it's cheap enough, so I just throw it away. Then create waste. In the old days, I remember when we were kids, my mom would buy clothes that we have 4 sons in the family. I'm the oldest one. My mom would buy clothes that with the thinking that when I outgrow that clothes, that jacket or the pants will pass on to my number 2 brother, number 3 brother, and number 4 brother. Okay, something that lasts, because resources are limited, so people don't want to waste them. So it is very much a change of thinking about what we want to do. So the consumer behavior also needs to change. And if we demand products that are repairable, reusable, for a long time, that will, and then they command a better price, you spend more money on a good piece of product. So this is a message that consumer needs to tell the manufacturer, because I come from the manufacturing sector. Manufacturers love to build good products with high quality. But if the consumer keep telling me they want a cheap product, they want to throw it away quickly, then what other choice do I have? Either I run out of business, I have no business, and then it stop. So it's important that in our mission is really start about thinking from design, thinking from the design concept. How do we plan and design make things work? You mentioned about the GBA, the Greater Bay Area. This is exactly that when manufacturers are across the border, and we are consumer in Hong Kong a lot of times, and from the Hong Kong view, we're buying things across the border. We need to also expand or reduce that border concept. I mean, nowadays, thanks to other international politics, now Hong Kong products also being branded as made in China. So why should we focus so much about the borderline? So because if the manufacturers on Dongguan, we cannot get our product fixed if we just stay in Hong Kong. So we can move things back and forth without all the duty tax and all the bureaucratic paperwork. Then we can promote this repairable concept. And Hong Kong, even though we can find land, but it's a challenge every time. If you talk to government about land or anything require land, everybody will say, well, it's challenging, and it slows things down. So if we could take that border equation out and then make it simplified, then it will really bring the Greater Bay Area with Hong Kong working much better together. But I also want to, at the very end of my comment is, I want to thank BEC and Ming for the great report, very detailed, very comprehensive. I think it's a very good beginning to address the issue, but hopefully we can work on what's next as a solution with everybody's contribution. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Daniel. And well, definitely, I think this is, as Adam mentioned, this is just our first attempt to talk about circularity, but there will be more to come. And all of you will be part of that, I can assure you. Okay, now, think about time, we only have roughly 10 minutes left. I've got some questions coming in. But of course, before Chinese New Year, the government rolled out a blueprint. And more recently, there's also a consultation on PRS, on plastic bottle. So now I'm kind of torn between, answering those questions or talking about the blueprints. Maybe we should address a few questions first, and then very quickly going back to some of the government policy papers, all right? Now I have a question directly to Nigel. Do you agree or support that government should take up the responsibility to centralize recyclable collection and set up a central sorting facility in Hong Kong so as to increase the quality and quantity of recyclable in Hong Kong?
Yes, in the fact we do need sorting facilities, not just one. We produce far too much material, and they can be small. I think people sometimes are very frightened by the scale of some of the sorting facilities you might see in Europe or America. And my company operates some significant ones in Germany. But in fact, they can be relatively modest.
Okay.
And we can build them into our new towns that we're developing. So don't be frightened that they're too big. Equally, we need quite a few of them.
Okay.
To go through. So I don't think it necessarily should be government to think, oh, we've got to build a new one. And to be absolutely fair, that will take quite a long time. So we actually need to make much quicker.
Okay.
So I would say, yes, let that be a part of the policy to support, make land available, or it could be in a 15-story building. It doesn't need a big warehouse. Yeah. Modern days, you see on Qi, we've got these huge 15-story buildings with 40-foot lorries can go to the roof.
Right.
Perfect for sort of waste facilities.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Nigel. I have another question from Melanie to Amy. From her understanding, one of the barriers to fully utilize OPAC's capacity is logistics and the cost incurred for businesses to transport the food waste to the facility. For Swire, do you have any ideas how to tackle, or do you have any experience to tackle this problem?
Right, thank you, Simon. So for food waste, right now we are facilitating the collection of food waste at all our portfolios. So we have set up a central collection location. So and also offer like free bins or free bags and collection from our tenants' premises to that centralized collection kind of area in our portfolio. So then we work with the recycler or the transporter from our collecting centrally from our area portfolio to the OPAC. Yeah, does that answer the question?
I think so. Thank you for sharing.
Can I just
yes, please.
That point is exactly what I'm suggesting, is that at the moment we're very reliant on very large facilities scattered around the edges of Hong Kong. We can build small food waste facilities much closer.
Sure. Okay. I think that's a good point, Nigel. The next question actually is probably for Helga, but I think it will be a challenge to answer. That's why it's for you. Which is the world's biggest and most successful circular economy to date, and the scale of it in monetary terms. In Hong Kong, if we remove all the hurdles and with full potential or political support, how big the circular economy potential will be for Hong Kong? That's why I'm saying it's difficult to answer.
Can I come back in a year? No, it's hard to say what the biggest one, as I started out, the question of how to measure what is circularity and how circular is any economy is a really challenging one. And Ming has done a great job capturing a lot of these dimensions. What I can say is that there's some economies that have gotten a lot of great policy support. And I think a lot of people would think of France, for example, which has done a lot around very progressive waste management. Not quite there yet, but at least on the policy side, a lot has happened. But again, that's not the extent of the full circular economy. Netherlands has done a great job, also especially at the urban level, but really implementing this in all parts of an economy, from the large corporates to the entrepreneurs. Denmark has done a great job in pulling in a lot of the captains of industry to give guidance to government also on how to get there. I wouldn't be able to say right now neither what Hong Kong's full potential is, nor what the biggest one is, to be honest.
Okay.
But I have to, get in a little bit. You forget German, something like great job.
I challenge that. I challenge
You
that.
challenge that. Because
I challenge that.
but one thing that I learned about Germany is the Green Dot program and the packaging, how to assess the packaging, how to simplify packaging. They tax on the packaging. If you don't have a simple packaging, you pay a lot more money. So I thought that was quite interesting. But again, nobody gives credit to people who make product that last forever.
Yeah.
I think that is something that we need to do that, and that goes with the design.
Yeah.
When we change something, usually is they make it so difficult now. You cannot just simply change the chip or change something. It's a big circuit board. In your facility, the TV is gone. I mean, destroy the whole TV. But if they were talking about being slow, upgrade, maybe they could change the small.
It's not just a design question; it's also a right to repair question, which is why the whole development in Europe and in the US around these questions is very interesting.
Yeah.
Then we get into intellectual property questions, which are a whole other topic.
Right. I have two questions, and I want to combine those two because it's about money and fiscal policy and investment. Daniel, because you have experience with, say, the recycling fund and other funding opportunities within the Hong Kong government structure. Now, are there any ideas or suggestions that the government would provide fiscal policy measures or investment opportunities for those who want to transition into a circular economy, or to think about circular products and so on?
Well, I think that you mentioned about the recycling fund, which is one effort to try to support the recycling.
Just part of
just part of the circular economy, just part of it. Is it enough or is it not? I certainly think that, as Nigel said earlier, that we need the whole government in very high level, chief executive level, to really put a lot more points on it. EPD is doing a great job, but again, a lot of times it touches in different departments. And we need to work closer together. Like the EV car we were talking about, financial secretary Paul Chen is chairing the green transport, which is not directly under EPD, but being supported. So it's part of the effort. But I think we need more of such kind of high level effort in order to bring everybody together, in order to make it work.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. Now we are getting close to 4:30, but I really want to have your views on the blueprint. May I start with Ming very quickly? We published our report 3 days before the blueprint has been announced. Do you think the two documents actually work together well, or do you think otherwise?
Thank you, Simon. So I definitely think that our report complements the blueprint. Many of our recommendations that we suggested in the report is actually touched upon in the blueprint. So for example, to implement MC charging or to provide funding for green tech innovators. But I think our report goes beyond what was mentioned in the blueprint and takes a more holistic view to achieve circularity. Because in my opinion, the blueprint still focuses too much on hardware and on infrastructure to achieve circularity or to minimize our reliance on landfills. And although infrastructure is important and really forms the backbone of circular economy, there are other aspects that are overlooked in the blueprint. For example, on design, how we can improve product designs, how can we encourage other alternative markets like for repair, remanufacturing, etc. And so in this sense, our report actually identifies other key opportunities that can further accelerate Hong Kong's transition to a circular economy.
Okay, thank you, Ming. Now, finally, I just want to very quickly run through our panelists. Very shortly, just say a few words about your thoughts on the blueprint for the PRS consultation. Because, you know, we are really running out of time flies. Nigel, can I start with you?
Ming picked up a very good point indeed. Yes, it addresses certain points, but it doesn't do the point about design. It talks about circularity resources, but doesn't address how that can happen in terms of logistics and in terms of sorting facilities and in terms of processing facilities. So, yeah, it's good, but it needs a little bit more.
Okay.
And this help, I think, would help contribute to that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Nigel. Danny?
Well, in the bigger picture, we look at why do we need to do all this? It's because of the climate change. It's affecting our lifestyle. So we need to put down all this just pure financial interests or political interests to work together. We're talking about right to repair, example like that. So we need to all get our heads together and say, how can we make things simple in the future?
Okay, and Helga?
What I'm missing, I'm grateful that there's a new blueprint, we needed it, but I'm missing a clearer baseline. It shouldn't be up to me to do the math every single time I need a number. It's true for the statistics that are published, and again here in the blueprint, it's a bit of a mixing up of various types of numbers. I'm missing a much stronger focus on MSW charging. I mean, it's mentioned for sure, but it is really, really key. So please, Electrical Billing Committee, end of the month, go ahead with it. Take courage. Hong Kong wants this and needs it. We do need a single waste authority. Back to the topic of better collaboration. It's true for circular economy across various departments, but just on the waste topic, we also, I mean, just waste management and recycling, we need a single waste authority that could be any of the existing agencies, but then pulls it all together, because right now it's a mess. And and then finally, we need a much stronger focus on logistics, including encouraging consumers to keep things separate, but then also making sure that everything that comes after that gives the consumer confidence that if I do the right thing, everything that follows from here is above board, and everything will get recycled as long as I do the right first step.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point, the last point, especially. Amy, are you still with us?
Yes.
Yeah, can you say a few words?
Yes, I think I would like to, see two things. One is more collaboration between government departments and also outside Hong Kong, because I think circularity is a cross-departmental efforts, and coordinating with other departments when formulating policies and regulation, EHD and the BD, EMSD, and can support the city transition to a circular economy in every segments and sectors. And with this collaborative efforts, I think this could help us achieve carbon neutrality. And in addition, I think we hope that, on top of the blueprint, there will be more tools and practical guidance for various sectors to achieve circularity. I think there's, take for example, the New York City is a good example of having a zero waste design guideline, and, and also show that the city officials supports and collaborate with various stakeholders in the building industry to develop guidelines on building design that can facilitate zero waste through construction design, and also spaces and more accessible recycling facilities within the building. So that would be something that we hope that, after the, publication of the blueprint, there will be further information, tools and guidance be available. And also the government will take a more collaborative approach on achieving this circular transition to circular economy.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy. And with that, I also want to thank panelists who joined us at BEC today. Thank you all for your thoughts and insights. And also thank the 150 plus participants who stayed with us until the very end. Sorry, we overran for about 5 minutes, but I think it's very worthwhile to stay for that extra 5 minutes. Thank you for coming today, and I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.